if you're using in this way awareness, it's dynamical, it's become practical.
It was very absurd. I was 8 years old.
Your energy.
Certain different functions, different levels in ourselves. As the name of the method says, it's the art of conscious change, which means that actually to start using what the method teaches, you have to be able to discover your consciousness, which is the first step. And some of you who have maybe previously done some meditation or other types of practices, then you actually know that it's not such an easy thing in the first place to find out, like practically, what that consciousness is. Yeah? Philosophers, Plato and Socrates and so on, have talked for their whole lives investigating what the consciousness is and still not arrived at a satisfying conclusion. So, but this is from where this method starts. So the main and the first foundation is to recognize the consciousness itself. And then using the different qualities of consciousness, we start to change other aspects, mainly inside of us. So that's the art of conscious change. And art, because you have to be quite a smart cookie to understand when to change what and what kind of method or technique you're going to use. One principle that is here in the art of conscious change always is that only you can change yourself. Yeah? Has anybody else tried to change you? Has that happened before? And how has that turned out? Yeah, have they succeeded? No. And even if they do succeed, what actually succeeds? It's that you decide, okay, I'm gonna change. Yeah? So other people, at best, if they are good at this, can hint towards like different options towards what you can change or how your life can be better. But you will still be the one taking the decision that, okay, I'm gonna do it. So others cannot change you. Have you tried to change others? Yeah. Yeah. So a spouse who is not acting the way he or she should, or a child or an animal or other people who should change, yeah, they should change there. Yeah. Has that been successful? No, yeah. So if we look at it like this, others cannot change you, you cannot change others, why do we still do that? Yeah, you've had your feedback for years that it doesn't work, and we still try to do that. Yeah. So looking at the activity and the consequence and the ratio of how beneficial this whole activity is in the light of this consequence, in the light of the result. So that's why one of the basics is, and when you understand this really practically, only you are empowered, allowed, and can change yourself. This is also a perspective of empowerment, meaning that, for example, if you think that others have to change, or I don't know, companies have to change, or those other people somewhere doing bad things have to change, then all of your like wellness and all of your happiness, either you're satisfied or not, depends on if these others behave the way you want them to. So all the power and all of the decision is outside. So your happiness depends on them. Either it's people or structures or companies or systems. And in this way, we feel like spectators or victims even. Yeah? If they change, I feel good. If they don't, I'm still not happy. Yeah? So this is actually giving all of the power away, this perspective. Saying that that person made me angry is giving the power away. Because now it depends on that person. Either you're feeling good or you're feeling angry. Now this one, the art of conscious change, says that you can change yourself, which means that everything depends on you. In the example of that person made me angry, what is actually happening? That person is a trigger. But that person does not actually, if we look at closer, bother you. What actually bothers you is the feeling of anger, right? That's the one that makes you suffer. That's the one that makes you, I don't know, boil in the case of anger, or makes your body tense. So because emotions have quite a big effect on the physical body, right? And if it lasts for long, it becomes a chronic habit. But for example, imagine a situation, the same situation with that person who was a trigger that activated your reaction of anger. If you don't have this reaction of getting angry, anger popping up automatically, and you meet the same person and you don't have this reaction, so what is the opposite of anger? So if you don't have anger, you might have that opposite one because you don't have anger. Now, if you're feeling non-angry or feeling at peace and you meet the same person, is that situation a problem or not anymore? Not anymore, right?
Could be. Depends what the person is doing, I would say.
If that person, actually, if we look at it from this way, no matter what that person is doing, what actually bothers you is your own reactions. Anger, for example, or sadness. But all of these reactions actually happen inside of you, right? Where do you experience them? In here or out there? Yeah? Inside, right. Others are only triggers that activate your reactions, and your own reactions make you suffer. So, and also actually cause bias, right? Because when you're angry, then you see everything in one light. And for example, when you're at peace or I don't know, feel gratitude, then you see things in another light, right? So this, what kind of reaction is present in you, actually paints the picture or changes your perception of what you see, what you hear, how you actually interpret everything. So that's why we always look inside, because we said that you can change yourself. So it means that if this anger pops up from you, it is possible that you can change this reaction. And now, for example, when you don't have this reaction anymore, then when you meet that other person, then you are at a better I don't know, circumstance to handle this situation. Yeah, for one, you're not angry, and for other, you're not so biased because of what, for example, anger does. So you can clearly see more clearly. Yeah. Have you noticed, for example, how emotional reactions cause, we call it illusion, illusionary perception, illusionary view? Or we can also say cause bias. Have you noticed that? Raise your hand if you have. Yeah. So it can be that the situation is the same, but the emotion that you experience and the reaction you have makes it totally different. So actually you don't perceive reality as it is, you perceive it through that lens. The art of conscious change, as I said, came to be. It is created by Ingvar Villido, and he has one more name. He's also called Ishwarananda. Ishwarananda. So this is a spiritual name, and that was given to him when he became the master teacher or acharya of Kriya Yoga. Who is Ingvar? We often call him like a professional yogi, meaning that he actually has always had an researcher type of or engineer type of mindset, always wanting to find out, like in an engineer way, what's behind things, what's behind the words, what's behind the seeming, and not reading those things from books or going to school or becoming a scholar or like this academia side, but more like investigating through practice, through introspection, and through experimentation. So doing something and repeatedly seeing what's the result, what's the consequence. So he has always been inclined towards investigating and researching. And why we say a yogi, because he has done it without books. And so he went through quite a long path, practicing all sorts of different traditions and modalities that are available in the world. And he wanted to find an integral system, a wholesome system, to understand who are we, humans. Who has had the question in their mind, so at some point in their life, who am I? Raise your hand if you have had that question. Okay, that's a core question of every human being, to find out who am I. Now there is an option to go a philosophical route and do that what philosophers have done, to think about who am I, and reach to, for example, a conclusion where Descartes reached. I think, therefore I am. So equating your being with thinking mind. We will see towards the end of today's workshop that actually Descartes was not right, but he spent his whole lifetime investigating the thing. And so this is the philosophical route of finding who am I. The other is the practical route. The practical route is very similar to what we use in medicine, and that's like the elimination, or making a diagnosis based on discerning and elimination. This is not it, this is not it, this is not it, this is not it, what is left? Yeah, so that's the practical side. Now finding out who am I in this way means you start to discern on what's happening on the inside, because you're not looking for yourself from the outside, right? From the trees or flowers, yeah? You have that question about you. So you start to discern actually who am I, and what are the processes that occur here, but what those phenomena are actually not me, but phenomena that I can recognize, observe, and also influence. And so this finding out who am I, actually, when you do it in a deepening way, the logical and the result of that is self-realization, meaning you realize who you are, practically, because you have eliminated practically all other ways of identifying yourself with the other phenomena inside. So this is the route that Ingvar went, this yogic, this practical route. And he was looking then through Buddhism, through Dzogchen, through Osho teachings, different yoga styles, shamanism teachings, everything, and you see all of those elements here as well in the community. So those are all of the things that he practiced. Looking for who am I, and like an integral system to understand, make sense of things. And he actually expected, like we all do, that there is some knowledge and I just have to go and get it. So he expected to find these solutions, these answers from those teachings. But he didn't. He still had questions left, and to one day when nobody was able to answer those questions, give adequate answers, only philosophical ones. So he started on his own, practicing on his own, and other people joined him. And these are the students that he has. And during time, of course, the amount of students has grown. And he did find the answer in the end, finally saying, and has had that for some time. And now when he found that answer, who am I, reaching realization like that, he started to share that knowledge more. So there's a difference in, for example, people who have, like Eckhart Tolle, who share their story that this happened with me overnight. It was a blessing. Yeah. So they can describe how life is now, how it is different, and that actually you suffer for no reason. There is a way of living without that suffering, but they cannot give you the pathway. They can only describe how it is to live without negative reactions, how it is to live as a realized self. But they can't give you the pathway because they haven't walked that path. It was a blessing, an event. Now, when people have walked that path, they know exactly what they did and what they didn't do, and how that can actually be a path for others as well. And teaching his students, Ingvar has drawn out the essence of that path. What is the quickest way towards this? Meaning that we all have a certain amount of years in our life. We don't have all of the time, although when we're young, it feels like we're eternal. The body is eternal. We feel that. So he started to teach Babaji Kriya Yoga, which is a teaching of the Tamil Mahasiddhas. Siddhas are the ones who have attained perfection, going even beyond self-realization. So this was the teaching of Mahasiddhas given to humankind, the Kriya Yoga. Ingvar started teaching that. And it's a very high teaching put together by the ones who have attained perfection. And he saw that although it's a very high and very good teaching, some of his students still couldn't practice it, couldn't reap the benefits of that teaching. And he started to investigate what's the problem there. Why? It's such a good thing, but why is there no progress as there could be? And then he found out automation, autopilot. How many of you meditate? Raise your hand. Okay, when you sit down on your pillow, how long, when you've done the practice, you know how long it actually takes to really, settle into that practice, or how many years it has taken to really have some results because of the autopilot. You start to do your thing and suddenly you discover that you're thinking about something else. You want to, for example, focus on either, your breathing or some object that you create in your mind, but then you start to discover that, okay, I'm actually listening to those other sounds, and then my feet are hurting, and so your awareness goes, we call it monkey mind, to all sorts of places, and you can't actually properly concentrate because of the autopilot that comes and hijacks and takes over your aspirations. So he discovered the same thing. And then he started to investigate, okay, this autopilot is really a problem. Intervening to a person's own will, and how can we change that? What it's actually made of, and how can we change that? And then he created the art of conscious change. And having taught that for a few years to those yoga students, then people started coming up to him and saying, oh, I can see actually that I use those techniques now every day, not only when I do my Kriya Yoga. And actually I see that others have that problem of autopilot as well. So maybe you can teach them publicly. And he said, Ingvar said, fine, yeah, let's do that. And that's how it all came to be. So this teaching, although it is very simple, it consists of micro actions that are done using awareness, has very deep roots. Roots in Kriya Yoga, in the teachings of the perfect ones, and being a bridge in between the two. What is my background is that I'm a medical doctor. While I went to university to study medicine, I already had met Ingvar. So my path was simultaneously in very academic, very like Western medicine, and then in this path, the other one. I struggled for a really long time because these two worldviews seem so opposing. One, the academic one, says the body, the physical body, is the top of the hierarchy. Everything is made and depends on the body, especially the brain. Yeah, your brain runs your body, which is true. The hormones and the biochemistry and everything. Your brain creates the emotions. Your brain creates the thoughts. Of course, awareness and consciousness also come from the brain, according to this worldview. And the scientists are now looking from where it actually is coming from. Haven't found that. And now, I just read an article a few months ago, which was, I can't say disturbing, but the scientists have for a long time had this hard problem of consciousness. Hard problem because they don't understand how a consciousness, which is almost immaterial, and the physical body, which is totally material, how they actually like interact. And how can a brain, which is material, produce an immaterial thing, which is a consciousness? Or how does an immaterial thing, consciousness, affect the physical body? So that has been the hard problem of consciousness. And now, recently I read this article a few months ago that said, yes, we don't oppose that consciousness exists, but actually we think that it's like a rainbow. It's nice to have, it's beautiful to look, but actually it has no use. So our consciousness, according to a new wave of scientists, is like the rainbow. Yeah, nothing in there, passive thing, doing nothing. And it just says that they, in a way, they are right, because actually consciousness itself is static. It is passive, but consciousness has actually 7 active qualities that we can use actively, and then it's not passive at all. Those qualities are your ability to notice things. Do you use that quality in life? When do you notice sounds? Then you use that noticing. When you notice the sensations in your physical body, then you use that noticing. When you notice smells or tastes, you use that noticing. So that is actually one active quality of consciousness. I'm not sure that you know that you already use that quality, that's actually the one very rare quality of consciousness that you're already using without knowing that you do it. Yeah, it's actually very, very like natural for us to use consciousness. The other active quality of consciousness, for example, is insight. Raise your hand, who of you have had I don't know, blessing, or because it is a marvelous moment. Who have you has insights? I have had. What is that moment? It's a very sudden thing, right? Like a realization. You've pondered upon something for a long time, thought about it, investigated, and then during a few seconds it all comes together. Yeah? So it's like, when I compare, it's like something like a memory stick put on you, and then something like really big is downloaded, and then you're like so enthusiastic about it. You want to tell others, like, you know, I just realized that thing, and then you see that you're short of words, that you can't really explain what you just realized. Then that's a struggle. Why? Because that insight came through consciousness, and now you have to transport it into a tool of description, which is your mind. What do you think is thinking and your mind and consciousness through what you, for example, receive insights? Are they the same things or different things? Raise your hand who thinks it's the same thing. Thinking and noticing. Raise your hand who thinks it's different. Yeah. So what happens is, listen to sounds that you hear now. All sounds are good. All sounds are suitable. That's what I mean. Yeah. Can you see that you're like scanning the environment? Keep it at that. And when you notice that you're scanning, noticing the sounds, you're actually not thinking. You're very quiet inside. For some people, it's a few seconds. But I suggest you prolong it. Now, when you have noticed, what we can also say, become aware of that sound, then your mental part, the mind, kicks in and starts to describe what you just noticed, right? Oh, that's that sound, that's, I don't know, 50 meters away, that's made by that thing or a person, and so on. Then it starts describing what you just noticed beforehand. But the noticing itself happens without thinking. And thinking comes after. So that's like a secondary phenomena describing something that you already know. Right? So thinking is not the same as consciousness. People very often put them into the same pot. So, and insight is through consciousness, and that's one of the active qualities of consciousness. And I could go on, as I said, there are 7 different ones, and those are actually the best tools. Yeah, we would all, I don't know if you, but I at least would like to have insights as often as possible. For example, one of the qualities of consciousness, active ones, is inspiration. Who would like to have inspiration in their life? Yeah? Okay, that's also a good thing, right? So if we look at it like that, and is insight ever a bad thing? Is noticing itself, noticing as a process itself, a bad thing? You become aware of stuff? No, it's never. It's actually neutral or beneficial if you apply that. So that's not that's a level. The level of consciousness and its active qualities is actually problem-free. It's always neutral or making positive consequences in our lives.
Can be disturbing too.
Sorry?
Can be disturbing too.
When we look how and what is disturbing, is that of course when you realize something or notice something, it usually causes a reaction inside. Positive one or a negative one. And that reaction is often disturbing if it's a negative one. But if we look what that reaction consists of. So for example, you become disappointed. What do you find? What's in that being disappointed? What does that reaction consist of? When you are disappointed, can you describe what that consists of?
Sadness.
There is some emotion there, right? Either it's disappointment, or feeling of sadness or feeling of guilt or feeling of whatever else. So there is always an emotional component. Look at your struggles, your sufferings, your challenges or your problems. Do all of them actually include an element of emotion?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's the negative emotion or the problematic emotion, the harmful emotion is always one part of the problem. Now take one problem, for example, feeling disappointed or sad or whatever you have like closest. And take a perspective that you have the same situation minus that emotion present there. What is left of the problem? You don't feel that thing anymore. It's not part of that problem anymore. That feeling of sadness or disappointment. Yeah?
There's no problem.
There's no problem anymore. Exactly. So some is left, a little bit of the problem is still left, but the majority of all problems and all sufferings are caused by the emotional component there. We say that when we observe closer, then we see that these emotions that pop up and make you feel then sad or disappointed, causing your problem, that they pop up automatically. Have you discovered that? Very often it's the other way around, that you decide, okay, I'm not going to be disappointed in that situation anymore, or there's no point in worrying those things anymore, or I'm not going to be angry, I'm going to be totally calm. And then you walk into that situation and it all comes again. Yeah, you've made all of your nice plan, how it's going to be different this time, and I'm not going to be irritated and everything. I'm going to hold back. I'm not going to say anything. Or the other way around, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to speak out loud at that meeting or thing. And then you go there and like that. Yeah. So the same thing happens. It's like repetitive, and that's why we call it autopilot. Have you heard of the autopilot? Have you noticed it? Before we discussed a bit that you, for example, start to meditate and you have a goal and you want to do, you probably want to achieve something with your meditation, otherwise you wouldn't do it. And then the autopilot comes and hijacks you from your goal. So this autopilot is actually a reaction, a set of reactions, and they always have the component of an emotion and actually also thoughts or some data component. It can be a memory. Sorry?
Physical sensation also.
Sorry?
Physical sensation.
Physical sensation, yes, that's also there. So actually a reaction is a unit. Carl Gustav Jung, maybe you've heard of Jung. He was like a disciple of Freud, but later on founded his own branch of psychology. He called these things, already he had discovered these things, and he called them complexes. So a complex is glued together by an emotion. All your habits, all your disturbing reactions, they are complexes that are held together by an emotion. But the complex also consists, in addition to an emotion, a data part. So, data. So some information coming from your memory. And the physical body part. And the body actually is seen as a common end pathway, meaning that when you think angry thoughts, you have a feeling of anger and your body goes tense. When you think sad thoughts or have sad memory, then you feel sadness and your body starts to cry. And so on we can go. When you think loving thoughts, you have a feeling of love and your body is soft like butter. Yeah, or something. These are like very black and white examples. It's not so black and white in life, but you get the point. So these are the complexes and the autopilot. Now, when we look at, for example, I started that I'm a medical doctor, and my path was going side by side with Ingvar's teaching. So in medicine, it's said that everything is produced by the body, all of the reactions, everything. What the art of conscious change and the yogic side says is exactly the opposite. It's the subtle phenomena that initiate things, and they are finally expressed in and with the physical body. Yeah. So as was the example before, for example, you have a sad memory, then you have a sad emotion, and the body becomes such that you start crying, for example. So these are two totally different viewpoints. The medical viewpoint is that you have to change your brain. You have to get a new one if you have a problem, or augment it. Soon it will be possible, I'm sure, to put some chips in your brain, microchips, or like a headset, and then you can start to influence different areas of your brain. So you try to manipulate your brain. But medications do it today already. Different kind of, for example, psychiatric medications. We change the brain. We try to change the neural networks there. But that is only effective as long as as we do it. For example, the pills are effective only as long as we take them. The different kinds of sets are effective as long as they are there, doing their influence. I specialized in psychiatry, so I know quite a lot about mental health and mental health challenges, shall we say, disorders, diseases, and so on. And actually, I have seen this to be true in the case of my patients, that when they stop their medication, and it's also actually a worldwide statistics, for example, we know that in the case of depression, 5 years later, 80% of people who we said are cured have a relapse, meaning another occurrence of depression. So it means that a pill is not going to take away your habit of feeling sadness, a habit of thinking lonesome thoughts, a habit of seeing pessimistically the world. It only suppresses the neural networks in the brain that correspond to those thoughts and those emotions, and is active while you take those pills. But it doesn't eliminate those habits, which means that they are only dormant. And when you don't affect the brain anymore, they come alive again. Meaning that you are basically in the same place again. Now, the art of conscious change is a totally different system. It says that you, using the active qualities of your consciousness, can actually influence your thoughts in such a way that they are not here anymore. You can actually influence your automatic emotions in such a way that the automatic emotion actually is released, meaning that it's erased, so to say, from your system. Usually people in society, we use suppression. Yeah, we don't let the emotion come out. Yeah, for example, you're angry, but you keep a nice face. Yeah, but you know that your anger is here, but you just don't show it, right? You keep it here, inside. Then we use acting out. In the case of anger, for example, it's yelling, speaking like that. If not so controlled, it can also be some physical action. That temporarily fuses or lets the tension come out, but it doesn't eliminate the reaction of anger itself. Next time, you become angry again. Yeah. Then we also use ignoring. Okay, what anger? What are you talking about? I don't know anything about that. And then we also use sublimation, which is turning this energy into another direction. For example, if you become angry, then you go out and start chop wood, or I don't know, clean the room in a very fast way. So you do something else with that energy, but it actually doesn't still eliminate your tendency to become angry. Now, the art of conscious change is different. It actually gives techniques that when you use your consciousness, you can totally release that reaction of anger at the moment when it occurs. So actually it's a micro action of 5 seconds or 10 seconds. You notice that emotion immediately, and when you do the technique, it dissolves and is released immediately. But the beauty is beyond that release at that moment. The beauty is also in that once released properly, it will never occur again. It might sound amazing, because it is amazing, yeah, but Ingvar has taught this method, this technique for over 10 years. We have, during this time, there have been more than 16,000 people who have learned these things. And the feedback that we have collected all verifies that it does actually happen. The release happens, and it's like irreversible. It's permanent. You never have that reaction again. Of course, when you really want to use an emotion, now you're free to use it. Which is actually just, I don't have a marker. So the question is that either your life is directed through an autopilot. You become angry, then you think like that, behave like that. You become sad, then you think like that, behave like that. Another day, you have a reaction of happiness. You think like that, you behave like that. Everything is commanded and done through automation. All of your emotions, your thoughts, and so on. I can see you. But the other option is that you release the autopilot, decrease the amount of that, and now start to use your inner instruments, emotions, thinking instrument, also your body, and the other qualities of your consciousness at will. Meaning that whenever you really want to, you can activate them, but they never intervene in such a way, they never take over again. So that's the difference between the old paradigm, as we say, a person whose main driving force is the autopilot reactions, either good or bad, it's still the autopilot, or the new paradigm where the driving force is your awareness and your consciousness. So these are two totally different things, and here we say that actually we have been taught that negative emotions and negative reactions are part of our normal life. We just have to accept that, and it's like inevitable. It's part of your human being, which is the worldview that we challenge. I give you the story here. I hope I find the English words. So there is this village where people live. They are not gatherers. They grow wheat and crops and everything. And it's autumn time. And it's a very busy time on the field, working there, and time to collect all of the crops and everything. And there is also in this village this wise old man who always knows when to plant seeds, when to do these things, when to grow things, how to grow things, when the rains are coming, and so on, and when it's the best time to collect your produce. And that wise old man says, people, be careful. Our water is going to be contaminated. Some toxic process is going to happen there. Collect and reserve water for yourselves, clean water. But it's such a busy time, and nothing has ever happened with water before, and people are like, what can happen with that water? Nothing really can. And the only one who collects clean water is this wise old man. And just to make this case more like black and white, more dramatic, let's say that this water gets infected or is infected by tuberculosis lepra. So a bacteria that causes deformations with the body. in the face and on the skin and everywhere. And all of the people drink that water from the well that is infected with the bacteria, and they start to deform, becoming different and different. But everyone does that, children and adults and old people, so everybody gets deformed. And initially it's strange, but then in a few months they get used to it. They see other people like that, and they see their own reflection from the water like that, and it just, they start to forget that they were different at one point. And like new people who join drink that same water and become like that again, and so everyone is now deformed, except for that wise old man who had clean water. And they are starting to point fingers. Look at that man. He used to be really smart and we respected him, but now he's so different. I don't know, maybe sick or something. And then they finally drive him out of the village because he is crazy, looking different and everything. And the kids show fingers on him, and he leaves. So actually in our society, on many planes, these kinds of things have happened. What is really widespread and what has lasted for some time, we have started to consider that normal. And that might not be normal at all. But we don't have a comparison because we have forgotten, or maybe there is none left, what is normal. Yeah? And then there are people like, for example, Ingvar, who has spent their whole lifetime finding out what is normal, what is the normal human being. And then they say, you know, actually having all of these negative reactions is not normal at all. And actually a life without negative emotions is not only possible, but it's actually normal for everyone, for all humans. But because we come from our society where that has been considered normal, we're like, I'm not sure, and we have all sorts of ideas, and we can all understand that because we come from this background. And of course, from generation to generation, not only genes have passed along, also worldviews and ideas and what we consider normal, right? So I would say that actually having a life without these negative emotions is normal, and it does happen when we release them. But it doesn't mean that we become like this, I don't know, emotionless fish, you know, like having nothing at all. No, it's that we don't have automatic, compulsory reactions anymore. We come free from autopilot, and now we can use our resources the way we want to. We are not biased anymore, as much, at least, because it's a process. Releasing is a process. You do it one by one, and it takes years to release all of those automation that we have collected. I saw a couple of hands before, so before I go to maybe mental health, mental wellness, happiness, and topics like that, to connect it all together, what I've talked about, I would like to give a chance to answer some questions. I saw that you had one, and you have, please.
Yeah, of course pills is one thing, but if you look at like neuro-linguistic programming, isn't that something similar to this way of working with consciousness? Do you understand my question?
I understand your question. I haven't been really deep into neuro-linguistic programming, but so actually I can't compare the two. I am deep here. I have practiced more than 15 years. So I have quite an experience from here, and I know that using consciousness, you do it through silence, you release your automation. The more automation you release, the more your true self is revealed. Because automation is also what is called the ego. It's the substitute you. Yeah. Let's do it like this. So when you release the substitute, then substitute doesn't remain, and then what remains is that which cannot be like vanquished or harmed, or what is already here, and then you discover yourself, what has always been, but is covered with all of the automation before. So it's actually impossible to discover yourself without releasing the automation. Actually, it is possible to discover it briefly, and that's the experience that we give on the first course when we teach the method. But the experience will be very short-lived, the experience of true self, because the automation kicks in really fast. So if I, for example, ask like this, do you identify with your physical body? When you introduce yourself to others, or when you think about yourself, how often do you see that you actually consider this body to be you? I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. Is this how you think? Yes. Yeah. So I am this. Yeah. But how many of you have heard this saying that you're not your body? Raise your hand who have heard that. Okay. So this is the chasm, right? You have heard that, but practically you still feel that you are that body. Yeah. When you become sad, when you become enthusiastic, when you become ashamed, when you become helpless, when you become happy, how often do you feel that I am happy, I am sad, I am angry? That you are that thing, that emotion. And when you introduce yourself to others, you may describe that, oh, what kind of a person am I? Oh, I'm this optimistic, positive person. I have these kinds of, I'm always enthusiastic. I maybe have a feeling of gratitude, and I go through life like this, and I think we should enjoy all of the things, so I'm having the feeling of enjoyment. So how often you actually describe yourself through what kind of emotions you have. But have you heard the saying that you are not your emotions? Have you? Yeah. So here again, at one side, you almost like, you know it, that I'm not that. But when it happens, when you really have this feeling of anger, or you really have this feeling of loneliness, then it's all over you, and you think, I'm so lonely, or something like that. Then you actually identify with that. You become that. How often do you see that you are the sum of your experiences? I am a doctor. I've learned this stuff, yeah? So that's the information I have collected into my memory, and now I have it, and I'm this. I'm this sum of this information. Or I don't know, but it can be both ways. I had a bad childhood, so that's in my memory as something that my childhood was about, and I had that experience. Or I had a really loving, caring childhood, and that's in my memory. Or I have been to so many trips around the world, visited all sorts of places, and I'm like, those are my experiences, and I'm that. So how often do you feel that you are what you know? You're like, I'm this, I'm that. And who?
I think it's a full autopilot system coming from our experience. It's everything inside our mind. Because it's our reaction, it's an autopilot system, so means we got experience before, and now we react like that because we have
Yeah.
Recorded somewhere in our
Yeah, exactly. And I want to continue. Who of you have heard that you are not your thoughts? You are not your mind, right? Me too. I've heard that. So it's again a chasm. At one point, somebody has told you that you're not that, and you know that I'm not that, and then you start to think how you're not that, and you still equate yourself with this thinker who is thinking on the topic that I'm not my thoughts. You know, have you discovered yourself on thinking that you're not thoughts? At the same time, like feeling that you are this thinker. So actually identifying with thoughts, thinking that you're not thoughts. It's weird things, right? So again, between all of these chasms, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my body, the philosophical like access or viewpoint or standpoint actually doesn't help us. Because although we know these things, like theoretically, if we don't have a practical experience, who am I then? When you eliminate that, okay, you're not your body, so let's like disappear your body. Let's make it vanish, so to say. You're not your emotions, okay, let's like vanish that level. So you're not that. In the beginning, I started that we do like a diagnosis, excluding, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that. Yeah. So let's take your thoughts as well. So you're not that either, and not your memories, not your experiences, everything that you have recorded there. What is left?
So.
Okay, that's a good theoretical answer again. I know that you know the topic, but see, look at it practically. Close your eyes. You leave out, so to say, the body. So that's not what is your primary identity. So like excluding that, okay? Now you leave out the emotions. I'm not my anger. I'm not my sadness. So you know that you're not that. So you're excluding that. Now you're excluding all of your like data in your memory, everything you have learned, everything you think about, everything, all experiences you have stored there. So you exclude that. Now when you have excluded all of these things, what is left? What does it look like? How many of you feel that nothing is left? Yeah. So you can open your eyes. Some people can also be quite have a fearful reaction to this. You mean nothing is left? I'm like dead. Nothing. This actually shows how little we know ourselves. Meaning that it's not really that nothing is left. It means that you are something beyond those phenomena. The body, the emotions, the thoughts, and so on. But there are many things that are beyond. And this is what we outline in the method of the art of conscious change as the system of 5 levels, system of 5 dimensions. That's like our blueprint, what Ingvar discovered, that we all have 5 different types of like functions or levels. Yeah, and we have to discern all of these functions really well to be able to, so to say, lead ourselves. So if we're talking about self-leadership, then it has to be really clear what party is to be led and what party is the leader. Right? Repeat that. For example, let's take an example of a car. In the car, there are many systems functioning simultaneously. The engine system, the body of the car, the interior of the car, the ventilation system, the electricity system, and so on. So all these functions have to work simultaneously and really well for the car to be a good car, right? But none of those functions are one and the same. They're different things running in parallel time, but none of them is the same. And then there also has to be a driver in the car. Even if it's a self-driving car today, there is still someone who has programmed and who is pushing the button or giving a command for it to do something. So the car itself doesn't do anything. There's always a boss in the car. And now if your car breaks down, you don't just start randomly repairing the car, you do diagnostics before, right? What is broken? What system, what function is broken? And then you start to influence that system, what is broken. It's the same with us. We have to be able to discern different functions, different levels in ourselves, and have to know who is the boss, who is the driver here. Because the driver can influence the systems. If the driver and systems are fused, there is no clarity. Who is the driver? Then nothing can be done. Most people try to lead their lives through thinking. And that's the main line of, for example, today's modern psychotherapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, having the cognitive part, talk therapy, the talking everything, going through memories therapy. So it's all about thinking. But according to the system of 5 levels, we know that actually the thinking tool, the mind, is not the driver. It's to be driven. Yeah. Because if you are thinking your thoughts, I could ask a question. Who knows that those thoughts are? Is there someone who is following those thoughts? Who is actually, so to say, informed that, okay, those thoughts, and when you meet a friend, then you say, oh, I had those thoughts again. Who knows that those thoughts are? And is that one who knows that those thoughts are silent or noisy? The thoughts are noisy, right? They always like brrr. But the one who knows that thoughts are? Yeah? So the thoughts are not you, and you are more towards that side who knows that those thoughts are. And when you learn who you are, you have a practical experience of that, and then know how to influence now the tool of thinking, the tool of mind through conscious action, because that's the bridge between you and the thoughts. Yeah, before we talked about noticing. So how do you know that you have those thoughts? You have to use something to notice them, right? That is actually noticing. For example, let's do this practice. Close your eyes and imagine a sunflower, the big yellow sunflower with a brown middle core, and no need to have the stem there, just take the flower part. So hold it ahead of you, maybe half a meter or 1 meter as it's comfortable. And notice that sustaining this sunflower here is actually work. It's effort. It takes effort to hold it here. You have to almost constantly refresh the picture. Where does this sunflower come from? It comes from your memory. So actually your memory is working, your mental instrument, your mind is working, producing the sunflower there. And you can see that it takes time, it takes energy to sustain the flower. Now, notice that there is the flower as an object that you are looking at. Then notice that there is also the one who is actually right now aware of the sunflower, looking at the sunflower. So sunflower and the one who is looking at the sunflower is different. One is the object that you see, and the other is the one who sees. Notice that there is actually a connection between you and the sunflower. You direct something towards the sunflower, like looking towards it, an activity of looking. Now put the sunflower on the top of your head, but more far away, like again 1 meter away. Imagine it there. And when you have it there, you can see that you're still like looking towards the sunflower, but now the gaze is upwards. Put the sunflower now at the back of your head. Again, 1 meter, at a 1 meter distance. You can do it, right? You're not using your physical eyes right now. And you can see that the sunflower is there, you're still looking towards it, but now the gaze is directed backwards. And now put the sunflower under the chair. Where is your gaze now? And discover, did the center remain the same? The gaze changed, right? The direction of the gaze, your direction of looking. And the sunflower also was the same, but at different locations. So you looking towards the sunflower, this gaze, this is your awareness. Your ability to direct your awareness towards an object, in this case an imaginary sunflower, and become aware of it. For a moment, put the sunflower again back in front of you, the initial position in front of you. And start listening to the sounds here outside and see what happens with the gaze. Where are you looking towards? You're directing something out of the tent into the, maybe the park area. Or maybe to the sky. Now restore the sunflower in front of you and see that you shift something away from either from the park or from the sky towards that sunflower again. So that connection, what you can intentionally move and shift, that is the awareness. Discovering that, now discover that you're looking towards the sunflower. There is a connection between you and the sunflower. Sometimes we illustrate that through an arrow. Notice that you have this connection, that this arrow does exist between you and the sunflower. So you let the sunflower itself go foggy. It's not so important anymore, and concentrate on this connection, the middle line. So this is how you become aware of your awareness. Become aware that you have it. Not the object that you're investigating, but with what you are investigating. Okay, let's open the eyes. Does any of you want to share your experience or some discovery or what happened with you? What did you find? Was it able to move? Yeah? You could do that, right? Did you also try listening to other sounds and then direct back to restore the connection between you and the sunflower? Did you see that you are directing something? Yeah? The moment that when you practically, sometimes you have to do it many times because it's a new thing in a way, the moment you discover the existence of your awareness, which means the connection between you and the objects. Where is your awareness right now? Where is it directed towards? To the kids that are speaking there? To the sky where the airplane is? Under your feet? Where you feel the floor? To my voice? Where? To your thoughts? Yeah. Awareness is our ability to establish connection with something. Any object, sound object, physical object, but also inner object. For example, when you discover that you have some kind of an emotion, how do you know that you have it? You're almost as if looking towards it, right? Like, oh, I have it here. You can even discover the location. But when you have some kind of thoughts, how do you know that you have those? And where do you experience your thoughts? Show me with your hand. Where do you experience thoughts usually? Exactly. No one has shown that they have thoughts here. It's usually here. Yeah. So and if you're remembering something, very often people look up, like looking towards your memory, your thoughts. Yeah. So awareness has a direction. It's here or looking there or looking outside, and it doesn't have limits. You can direct it through the windows and through walls and wherever. It's not limited through physical matter, and so but it has direction. So it means that, for example, if you want to fly to Africa, you can't at the same time go to the North Pole. Meaning, if your awareness is directed, for example, inwards towards thoughts, then it is not at the same time directed outside towards, for example, listening to someone else. Yeah. Has this happened to you that, for example, you are talking to someone and the partner that you're talking with is here physically, eyes open, looking towards you, but you can see that there is absolutely no connection, that the person is almost like away somewhere, not present, like somewhere else, in some other location. The physical body is here, and eyes are looking towards you, but he or she is not here. Have you had that? And you've probably been in the same kind of a person yourself too. So they are here, the body is here, the eyes are open, but what's the problem then? Their awareness is not coming out from the eyes or the ears towards you, where it should be, because you're having a conversation right now, but is directed probably towards what? Thoughts. Yeah. They're probably thinking, what are they saying? What should I say next? What should I ask? Do I have this question? And so on. So they are actually turning it inwards. But while it's turned inwards, it's not connected to the outer world. And so we live in our thought bubble all of the time, actually not connected to reality, to other people, to what's happening here. So the art of conscious change starts from finding what the awareness is, how it is actually managed right now through the monkey mind process. It goes everywhere like crazy. And then you start to direct it through your own will. And one of the ways you direct it is when we teach the first two sets or the first two courses, is how to now use this awareness, this capability to release automatic emotions, which means that you direct it towards finding an emotion, finding a reaction, knowing what is this awareness that you need to direct, and then release it. Yeah. So it all starts from finding out what consciousness is, what awareness is, and then how we use it to liberate ourselves, to become free.
Is there for you a difference between awareness and consciousness?
Slight, yes. And I don't have, unfortunately, time to go into that right now, because one thing is an explanation again, and the other, which in this level should be a practice, because the mental tool is for description only. It's not for experiencing, so we can at best describe the difference between the two, but actually better would be to taste the difference between the two. But tasting takes time, because you all have different kind of preparation, or you have done different things, so we don't have that time right now. I have slightly touched upon topics, some of the topics. Mental wellness. Does anyone have a question about that? And how it relates to what I've been talking about? For example, what do you use for work? Your physical body or your inner systems? Your thinking, your ability to notice, your insights, maybe also an emotion, because emotions are very closely related to energy. Yeah, for example, when you have a reaction of laziness, then you know what happens at work. But when you have, for example, enthusiasm, then that's a totally different story. Yeah. So do you use your inner resources, or do you use the physical body for work? Today in our world, mostly it's the inner resources, because we're out from the industrial age, and the body mainly sits on a chair, if that. So meaning that these inner resources and capacities are actually the tools that we use every day, and if there is no education about how to use these tools, when to how to align them, then it happens that you misuse them. Meaning, for example, you can misuse having emotional reactions, and that makes you miserable. Some kind of a negative emotion, or your thoughts, you're worrying all the time, that makes you miserable. So that is the difference between how a mental illness is like accumulating, and then the mental wellness, which is a state not only without the illness, but a state of realizing your potentials, using your awareness, and having happiness as well. So for example, if we look at, from my perspective, then actually I would say right now that mental illness is actually not an illness. Either it's depression or anxiety or addictions or post-traumatic stress disorder or anything else. It's actually the result of an accumulation of emotional and mental reactions. Yeah. For example, when you look at the diagnostic criteria of depression, then out of the list we take there, out of the 15 things, 10 things are negative chronic emotions. Feeling of sadness, feeling of loneliness, feeling of pointlessness, feeling of irritation. These are all emotional reactions, and negative ones, meaning that they create harm in your life. So when you have that for a long time, then that's what we call depression. It comes out of not having an education how to release those chronic emotions. Because if you had an education about that, if you knew how to release it, you probably wouldn't continue those, right? Nobody chooses, okay, let's get sad today, or let's start feeling lonely today. Yeah, nobody does that. Nobody would choose that. It's more of a compulsion. And so because we don't have this education, then I was talking about the story about the village and the man and the old man, and so we desperately need these people who re-establish the norm, saying that no, you actually can release those chronic things from repetition, and that's actually normal. But these people are like rare jewels, because most of the people have been drinking water from this infected well. So we need someone who restores the knowledge. And for a very long time, for centuries, there haven't been so many people restoring knowledge in this scope that everyone could use it easily, everywhere, in all situations, and so that it's systemized, so that it's not just random. I might be successful in it and the other person is not, but it should be like mathematics. If you learn the formula, then you get the results. So, and at least that's also what I value as a medical doctor. It has to be systemized, it has to be able to be repeated, and it has to give results. Yeah. So mental wellness is actually using of consciousness, using of awareness to release the problematic reactions. And if you don't have problematic reactions anymore, then what remains is, how do you feel when you don't have those unpleasant things? Yeah. About happiness, which was also on the agenda, is that all people search it. Right? Everyone wants to be happy. Nobody teaches in school that you should find happiness. There is no like subject on happiness studies and so on. But everyone is on the quest of it. Yeah. And so it's like something really deep in ourselves. We want to find it. Nobody has to tell us that we have to or should or whatever. And even if we don't find it during the years, we never give up. We're still looking for it. Everyone wants to feel happy, be satisfied. It's actually one of three really deeply ingrained like needs or wishes of every person. If we take this blueprint of five-level system, then it's every person has these core three needs, and happiness is one of them. And it actually stems out of your true self. When you are your true self, then all these needs are not automatically, but they are naturally fulfilled. So you're already happy. Yeah, there are three. Happiness is one of them. But when you're not your true self, then you keep searching for it. And then we usually try to search it from emotions and from experiences. And we try to search it from all of the things around us. But those things around us are never stable, right? When you have had your moment of happiness, how long does it last? Does it last for a month? Does it last for a week? No. Yeah, you buy a new set of shoes, new shirt, have a nice food. It always wears out, so it's not stable. You go to a nice vacation, you have a nice trip, you meet a nice person. It stays for some time, and then it again goes away. So it shows that from these things from among things, we can't find stable happiness. And if you look at it from the perspective of an emotion, then have you been able to like eliminate all other emotions and just feel happiness, only that? Has it ever been possible? Yeah, that's what I mean. Never possible to have it long term, to have it stable, because emotions change all the time. They are like changing phenomena. So that's why there is this saying also in yoga, what was the saying of Patanjali, that only ignorant or stupid people search for happiness or search for themselves outside from themselves. meaning outside, not this physical body, but we talked about previously who you are and what you're not. Meaning that there is short-lived happiness, and that is emotion. But there does exist one happiness that is permanent, that is stable. But it can be found only when you realize yourself. And then it becomes practically, it starts to fulfill you, or it becomes practically present, and it never goes away. So that is the place of true happiness, and that's why people who are self-realized, sometimes we call them enlightened, when you are in the presence of them, you feel like nice. They irradiate that happiness, and you feel it as something really special. But actually, it is the core part of you. Everyone already has it. It's just covered by reactions, and that's why you don't feel it. So actually, there is stable happiness, but you never are never going to find it if you look for it from among things where it doesn't exist. So stable happiness does not exist. It can't be found from amongst changing causes of happiness or changing types of happiness. Yeah. So it's the question, the art of conscious change is not just to release negative reactions, it's actually a pathway towards eliminating the autopilot part and finding that part of yourself that already exists, that has this stable happiness. Yeah. Which is going to replace, or not going to, people who have felt it, who have felt the happiness that comes along with the experience of true self, say that there is nothing better. Now, none of the emotions is able to compensate that, the happiness of true self. It's also called ananda, the bliss. But it's not euphoria. It's a different thing.
Could you describe it?
Hmm?
Could you describe it with different words?
No,
Is it joy?
it's impossible to describe it because these things are, if you take the five level system, then we have the physical body, which we can describe. Yeah. Then we have the emotions, which we can describe. Then we have the mental tool, the mind, which is the tool of description, that its work is to describe. So the mental tool describes the emotional experience, the physical body, and the mind can describe itself too. Like, oh, I'm having these thoughts again, or like, oh, these are nice thoughts I have, or again, I'm remembering those things, yeah, or I should not be thinking. Why am I thinking? So it can comment on itself. Yeah. So the mind is able to describe all of the things that happen on its own level, and also on the levels that are more gross matter, more material, the emotions and the physical body. Now the level of consciousness is beyond mind. It's before, so to say, mind. It happens in the silence, and then mind comes later. It's more primordial in respect to the mind. And the mind cannot describe things that are beyond it so well. But now, from the level of consciousness, there is another level, the subtlest, which is immaterial. And that is the true self. And the mind is totally incapable of describing it. It's going to be incompetent. It's going to leave something important out or make an idea of it. And that is going to be an obstacle, because then you're going to start to like expect something and rule out something else. And it's not going to help, actually. Yeah. So that's why it's not easily described at all. And people who have realized it say that it just is. And you have to take it like that. But I could describe it in this way, for example, that if you have you seen a disco ball with the mirrors? Many mirrors, like reflecting light. So if you scatter this disco ball so that all the mirrors are like apart on the floor or somewhere else, then every mirror, every piece is one positive emotion, for example. And the reverse side, the dark side, is a negative emotion, for example. Now, when you go in through your life, through searching for happiness from the pieces of the mirror, then you take one and then you take another and then you change, like, oh no, I want those pieces, I don't want those pieces, and you're always like playing this game of what pieces I have, what side is up, the mirror side or the dark side, and you're always dealing with these pieces. When you have an experience of your true self and the feeling of that happiness, then that's when all of these pieces come together to a disco ball. So it's not either any of these mirrors, because it's something totally different happens when they all sum up. They are at one time, all of them together, and none of them as separate. You can't call it joy because it's something else too. You can't call it compassion because it's actually also love. Yeah. So it's a totally different thing, and that's why it never, when you have a taste of that, then even positive emotions are not gonna allure you or trick you in such a way anymore. And then that's why we have that experience in the first day of the course. Then you know, like, the taste of that, and you know towards what you're moving, what is actually possible for you. You have that norm, what is normal, like re-established. Or it can also be said that it's like a flag on top of the mountain. You know it's there, and now you're making your path to there. But as our teacher says, reaching that state, when you clear out the automation, you realize who you are, that's not the end. In very many teachings, it's said that that is like the ultimate enlightenment, and it's a very difficult thing to do, and you might need many lifetimes, and you have to be a really good meditator and maybe even read a lot of books, and then it's also doubtful if you ever reach it. But he says that that is actually the first normal foundation and starting point of your life. Meaning that it's no longer a life of your autopilot running it. Now you are here, knowing that you're here, directing all of the resources that you have. What happens inside of you is what you influence on the outside. Now you are going to make your own life. So that's actually the foundation, and now you're starting out. That's the beginning, not the end. Yeah. Okay, we are going to have to finish, so who wants to go? Your time is up. I'm going to be here answering some of the questions. If you want to stay, you're welcome. But thank you for attending. And if any more questions arise, I am almost always next to the blue tent, in the tent where I talk about the art of conscious change. So you can come and ask me questions. And another alternative as well is that this is the first English book by Ingvar, especially made for this conference in English. And we have 200 copies. Yeah, and this explains basically the core concepts or the core things about the paradigm of awareness and consciousness. It's not a novel, so it's not like that you just read it through like a story, but it is easy to read because it's like this: a quote and explanation. But all of the quotes are like a topic for meditation. So it's like not digested. It's not digested that you just swallow it and digest it very fast. It's like you take your time and you get really good insights already from that. So these are the options. Thank you. And I'm happy to answer questions if any of you have them.
Thank you.
Thank you. you.